You mentioned before sort of writers knowing, for example, who the target audience is, who it's aimed at, what the goals of the characters are. Do you ever find people haven't got this brief when they started? They haven't kind of sat down and considered these things. Because obviously, like I think that's really useful, considering all this stuff, just to make sure you're headed in the right direction. And do you find that it's quite common not to do that?
Yeah, I think that I think most people when they start out, and I'm thinking of like my short stories that I wrote a long time ago. I certainly didn't have an audience in mind. I had in mind getting some words on the page, and I think I'm working stuff out in my early stories, just working stuff out and not thinking about that. And you want to tell the story that's in you. You don't want to tell somebody else's story necessarily, but what you want to do is consider, who are the people who would be interested and or inspired or entertained by what you have to write, because that will help you. I mean, let's face it, like we love writing, and that's really fun, but gosh, it's really nice when writing can also buy your groceries. And so, um, so we want to be artists when we're creating, but we also want to have in mind, like, who is this for? And who might be buying it. And then it helps you make editorial decisions to a certain extent, because if I were writing romance, like, I would not, you need those conventions that a romance author or a romance reader is looking for. Like, you need to include those. So if you're writing a romance, then you want to think about, what does the typical romance reader want, and what do they expect, and what are they willing to live with, like, how can you get creative with it, but you want to, again, it's structure, it's giving yourself some constraints to write with.
But yeah, understanding your genre is so important. Like, at least if you have just that basic idea of the genre that you're going for, that you can actually read in that genre, understand that genre. The first novel I wrote, I thought for quite a while, this is probably a romance, and so I bought books on writing romance, and I quickly found out that it was not a romance, because there are so many rules and different types of romances, and I think there was 20 different types of romance in this book, and each of them had these long set of structural rules, and I was like, nope, that doesn't fit in any of this. so trying to understand that and then reading from that so you can grab what is working for other people is a fantastic way to start.
Yeah. Yeah.
Apparently, you were talking before about how you saw these three films and they were all the same, all the same story or structure. I heard the other day that apparently Bridget Jones's Diary is a modern day Pride and Prejudice.
Oh, okay. Uh-huh.
The clues in the name of the character is Darcy, and that's kind of like a nod to that structure. And it just goes to show how you're using the same structure. And I mean, obviously, that's quite a drastic example of time and place. But it comes out with a completely different story. But how that, these timeless structures work.
Yeah. Yeah, because for me, that, like, stories are how we make sense of the world, and that that they have a sort of primal component. Well, the archetypal stories, right? Like, we know when a story doesn't work. We don't necessarily know why, but we kind of know that it doesn't work, and I think that all goes back to really our ancestral need to make sense of this world that doesn't make sense, and we haven't lost that, even though scientifically we have a greater understanding of how the world works.
Yeah, and yet we still want to explain it in terms that we can accept and understand in our own life. traveling to different parts of the world. And that's one of the things that I realized right up front. That's why story is powerful, because the stories that one person has on one side of the world are different than another person's, and then it totally changes how they view the world and set up all of their belief systems. It's fascinating how we do this.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, I spent 2 years when I first started doing publishing work. I spent about 2 years researching and trying to figure out how to get people to read and why it is they read. And there's just so much fascinating information out there, and how we really are. I think just recently another book came out called Wired for Story. That we really are. We are connected to story, and just like if you're a native speaker, you don't understand necessarily all the rules of your language, but you understand what works and doesn't. It's the same thing for us. We're all intuitively storytellers. And so, yeah, just like you're saying, we understand what's not working and what does work. And if we can have good people like you, developmental editors, to help us understand the rules of the story, to understand what's not working and to fix it, so that we can actually engage an audience and find a platform for our own work.
Yes. Yeah.
Sorry.
No. No.
I got into teacher mode there for a moment.
That's all right. That's all right.
You got me.
I need to go grab my jacket with the elbow pads on, because I'm going to do that. Yes, for sure. I think back to like when I was writing some early stories, and how they were, teenage angst, and and that, just struggling to make sense of things and to cope, and that it's and I'm working on lately. I've been starting to read outside of my comfort zone. And it's really interesting. So I'm reading a horror story right now, and it's not that's not me. I like I like cozy British mysteries and fantasy and a little steampunk. But I'm giving this a try because I want to kind of open up to other experiences and explore those kind of that darker terrain.
Thank you for listening, and come back next week for more. Please visit thebookeditorshow.com for show notes, links to guests, books and extras, and for information on how to be a guest on the show.